best way I can describe it was downloads. It came in like a thought. It was telling me that my power to get better was mine, that I had the power to change my reality, that my perception was everything, that your body is a mere reflection of your mind and your soul. And when your mind and your soul are out of alignment, your body by default has to be.
Mhm.
So it was, and these downloads were telling me the things I needed to do.
Welcome to How I Made It Through. Today we have Olivia Simpson. And Olivia is a registered nurse for 27 years and dedicated to her life to helping others heal. And in 2015, she was given a terminal diagnosis and told she only had 3 to 5 years to live. Despite the grim prognosis, she held on to hope and leaned into her faith and resilience. In 2022, Olivia experienced another life altering event, the loss of her beloved husband and partner of 30 years. These trials brought her to the brink, but also ignited a remarkable path of healing and self discovery. Welcome, Olivia.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I have listened to a little bit of your story, and you have been on an amazing journey. And so I would love for you just to begin to share with us how this all opened up for you and how it all began.
Sure. I'm 48. I met he was my previous husband. We were married for a long time. We were together for almost 30 years. I met him when I was 16 and got pregnant with my son and had him at 18 and went to become a nurse. We had a long relationship, lots of ups and downs. But it was just a regular life. My mom was a Pentecostal minister and my dad was a tradesman. So I was raised very strongly in the Christian faith. It wasn't something that I truly identified with myself. I always had faith in something. I just didn't know what. But so that was just part of how I was raised. I ended up having another child at 23 and we just lived our lives. I was an emergency room nurse. I worked in a prison for a long time. I worked in ICUs and also did some law work. In 2015, my dad died very suddenly. He just didn't wake up one day. And things in my life were just very hectic. I had had a lifetime of things like everybody does. I had had relationship issues, and my son was having a lot of problems. My dad had just suddenly died, and I had financial issues and job issues, a job that was very stressful. And everything was just kind of collapsing around me. I had always been healthy. I had had some back problems because of being a nurse all those years. So I had been on prescription medications for a long time, since early 2000s for that. I'd had different injections and things. Anyway, I had always been healthy, no health issues. But in September of 15, my dad died in May, and in September, one day I thought I had bronchitis. I was working as an administrator at a prison, and I didn't feel well, so I went to the emergency room. I went to an urgent care. They took a chest X-ray, and he showed it to me, and he said he couldn't believe it was mine, and I couldn't believe it was mine. I was in full-blown heart failure and had bilateral pneumonia, and that began an almost 6-month escapade of trying to figure out why I kept going into pulmonary edema. That's where your lungs fill up with fluid.
Mhm.
So my lungs were filling up with fluid. I couldn't breathe. I was very, very sick. I was at Cleveland Clinic where they diagnosed me with a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos, and I had never heard of it. Even being a nurse, I'd never heard of it. Um, and then they diagnosed a form of heart failure, but they couldn't figure it out. They sent me to Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic diagnosed me with something called high output heart failure and pulmonary hypertension. And long story short, it was a grim prognosis. He said I had about 3 to 5 years to live. I was prescribed a massive cocktail of diuretics. I was taking about 90 pills a day. It was probably 20 5 different prescriptions, but it was, 4 to 6 pills of each one 3 times a day, and that adds up. So I was in and out of the hospital every 3 months. I developed kidney failure. I was in stage 3B kidney failure, and it goes to 4.
Mm.
So I was really, really sick. I was just absolutely miserable. Um, then I had never really been a drinker my whole life. I really wasn't social. But then during COVID, it became a daily issue. It became a daily way just to cope and deal.
Mhm.
Um, Going back to my previous husband, his name was Daniel. When we were in our 20s, he had always said that he wouldn't live till 50. It was just a very matter of fact. He said, "I'm not gonna live to 50. I won't." And throughout the years, he had always said that, but I just kind of, you blow it off. You say, "Okay, sure. Sure, that's what's gonna happen." In 22, he was 49. He started saying in January, he started saying, "I'm not gonna be around much longer." He was making plans. He was talking about life insurance and things for our boys who are now adults, talking about all that. And in August of 22, he died,
Mm.
just stopped breathing. The autopsy was inconclusive. We had split up a year prior, but we were still very, very close. He was my person my whole life.
Yeah.
He still is. Um, anyway, so at that point, I really didn't have much hope. I had become agnostic over the years.
Mhm.
Not really an atheist. I believed in something. I just didn't know what. I kind of felt like everything had failed me,
Mhm.
that no faith fully described me. I didn't even living in Ohio, there's not a whole lot of diversity in spirituality
Right.
and what you can believe and what you're taught. So I was only taught one thing, and I knew that wasn't me. So I just thought I didn't believe.
Mm.
But my husband was always a very, very spiritual person. He was a Christian and he was very spiritual. But anyway, and so that he passed away in August, and then January of 24 is kind of where my story starts. It was January 6th of 24. My mom and I were going to see my brother's. He lives about 45 minutes away. So we left our house at about 12:30 and our ETA was 116. So we headed out on the freeway. I was driving her car, so I was really paying attention. And I had my phone in my hand, and I had the GPS, and it said I needed to get off the highway and I needed to turn on, it said Howell Road. It was in zero point 0.6 miles. Now I knew this road. It wasn't the way I wasn't there every day at the time, but I'd been the route before. It's a long straight road, goes very far. There's no stop signs or anything on the road. And I knew what I was looking for. I looked at my phone. The GPS said zero point 0.6 miles. My phone turned gray, which I'd never seen in the GPS yet before. It turned gray and the radio went out. And my mom was in the passenger seat and she looks up. She was had been on her phone. She looks up and she said, "What's going on? What's going on? Where are we?" And I look up because it was all in a split second. I look up and there had been traffic in front of me and traffic behind me. There's no cars in front or behind me, and there's a stop sign right there. Like I had to slam on my brakes to get the stop sign. My GPS recalculates and it says, "Make a left on Cherry." And my mom's saying, "Where are we at? What happened? Did you make a wrong turn?" I said, "Mom, I didn't turn. I didn't turn the wheel. I didn't do anything." And she's saying, "Well, what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna go?" And I said, "Just let's follow the GPS and see what happens. We'll figure it out." So I follow the GPS, I get to my brother's, and we get there at the same ETA at 116 is when we pulled up. Because when we pulled up, my mom said, "Oh, look at that. We still got here at 116." So I go inside and we tell my brother, I'm like, "Hey, I ended up on Cherry and 261." And he said, "No, you didn't." And I said, "Well, why didn't I?" And he said, "Well, that's in Trent. That's like 15 minutes in the other direction." He said, "How much longer did it take you to get here?" I said, "It didn't take us longer. We got here at the same ETA." And he just shrugged it off. And my mom just shrugged it off. They both just kind of threw their hands up and said, I don't know what happened." Meanwhile, I was completely mind blown by this prospect. I was the one driving. I was paying attention. I knew what happened. I knew that that we were on the road. I knew it. So my
Mhm.
whole life, I had been raised that psychics and mediums and all of that was absolutely the
Mhm.
devil. Like you
Yes.
don't go there, you know?
Mhm.
So the first thing I did was I contacted a psychic medium. And just said, I need to see. I said, I knew I needed someone, I needed contact with Daniel. I needed that. I had called my best friend who she had been on a spiritual journey for years. We'd been best friends since I was 14 before I even met my husband. And the three of us were best friends. Like the three of us were very close. And she said, that was Daniel. That was D. He was trying to communicate with you. Like he's trying to get your attention. So I reached out to this girl that I was an acquaintance with, and I just said, "Hey, I need a reading. I need to see if you can contact Daniel for me." And I didn't tell her anything. And she recorded her reading, and she got like so many things correct. And she said, you had something happen significant in your life recently that it was going to change everything for you. Everything in your life was going to change, and that he was with you the whole time, and that he was there with you. She gave me 3 things to look out for in the next coming time, and she said, "In those moments, he's there. He's sending you a signal."
Mhm.
And all 3 things happened in the next several days. It wasn't even weeks, it was just a few days. So all 3 of those things happened, and it I was in. Like, at that point, I was sold. Like, I'm like, "Okay, I gotta figure this out. There's more to this life than what I
Mhm.
believe." Everything I've believed up until this point is science based and facts and
Mhm.
figures and statistics and what you can prove. Like I said, my mom was a Pentecostal minister and she always was, praying and talking about miracles. And I'd seen several things through my life. Like once money was really, really tight when I was young and she was praying and she said, God, I need toilet paper and milk for my family and I don't have any money. And she was just praying about it, and within an hour, her best friend shows up at the door, who was also her, like, prayer partner. She knocks at the door and says, "Linda, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but something told me I need to bring you some toilet paper and milk." And she brought over in this bag toilet paper and milk. And so that's been, like, one of my favorite, stories of my mom's, prayer powers. 'Cause, I mean, I've seen it my whole life with her, but again, it just wasn't my journey. That was
Mhm.
my mom's. So, anyway, I digress. Sorry.
That was a
Um,
great story.
so anyway, so that I began looking deeper into spirituality. My best friend said I needed to start watching Next Level Soul. And that was just a guiding light for me in all this. I literally watched every single episode. Like I was like hundreds of episodes I just watched, just learning all of these things. But in the meanwhile, I was getting up early, I was meditating. I started getting what the best way I could describe it was downloads. It was it came in like a thought, like it
Mhm.
sounded like how I would think in my own head, but it
Uh-huh.
wasn't anything I ever thought of. It was nothing I had ever thought. It was telling me that my power to get better was mine, that I
Mhm.
had the power to change my reality, that my perception was everything, that your body is a mere reflection of your mind and your soul. And when your mind and your soul are out of alignment, your body by default has to be.
Mhm.
So it was, and these downloads were telling me the things I needed to do. It dropped in something about Indra's net, which was something I had never heard of in my life. And so I Googled it and it's a Buddhist philosophy. And Indra's net is a web of connectivity of love that surrounds the earth and connects us all. And
Mhm.
Indra's net and internet is kinda like, how the internet connects the world, and Indra's net is the same connection. And I had
Mhm.
never heard these things. These were nothing I had ever heard of. So I'm, thinking, "Maybe I'm Buddhist. Am I supposed to be Buddhist? Is that what this is telling me?" So
Mhm.
I'm Googling Buddhist temples, and in all my notebooks, because I was taking notes during all this time, and all my
Mhm.
notes, I wrote down Buddhist temple. Well, I went to go to Florida to visit some family, and I was at the airport and I walk into 2 Buddhist monks, and they were at the terminal where I was at. So I sat down and talked to them, and I explained everything that I was going through and what I had heard, and they were very matter of fact about it. And they said, "Oh, yes, you're
Mhm.
hearing from the divine." Like it's a Tuesday. And,
Yes.
he's like, "Just keep meditating, meditate more, and, I'll be very clear, there's a purpose to this, everything has a
Mhm.
purpose,"
Mhm.
so I and
Yeah.
it was another little piece of the puzzle. Like I said before, I had been drinking every day. I was on Vicodin for 22 years at that point. I was on all of my different heart medications and, different, kidney medications, things like that. I had started cutting back all of my heart medications, pretty quickly. My doctor had allowed me to change the medications based on my weight and my labs. So I started doing that, and I was monitoring myself the whole time. I didn't do anything haphazardly. But I stopped drinking that day. Part of the downloads were about the energy that you ingest, whether it's through thought, through food, through
Mhm.
conversations, anything. And it just was my belief that I couldn't eat meat anymore. So I became a vegetarian that day. Um,
Mhm.
Stopped drinking, stopped taking the Vicodin. I literally stopped everything. I was talking to my kids and my family about the universe and God and source and, just how wonderful things were. And I was telling them that I was better, that I wasn't going to need these heart medicines anymore. And they thought I had absolutely lost it. I mean, they, in their, and I, completely understandable. The doctors had told us all that my heart failure was terminal, that I wasn't going to get better, that this was my life. Even though the changes I was making, even within my life, stopping drinking, not taking the pills, not using marijuana, not being
Mhm.
negative, like that, all of those things were positive, but they were genuinely concerned about my health.
Mhm.
I had been taking care of a little lady for a couple years, a couple hours a week just to keep myself busy. And this this had been going on for a few years, and she had broke her leg in December. So all this happened in January. She broke her leg in December. So while all of this is going on, I'm caring for her still. And one day, the leg was bothering her really bad. So she goes and she grabs me by my shoulders and she says, "Please take the pain away, make it stop." And the whole conversation felt really weird. It was like when she grabbed my shoulders and looked in my eyes, she was in my soul. It felt very strange. And
Mhm.
so I took her hands off and I walked away into the other room and I just kinda shook it off and I said, "Boy, that was weird." I didn't know what that was. So I just carried on with my day though. I said, "We'll get you taken care of," and I gave her pain medicine and whatever I could do for her. I went home that night, and when I woke up in the morning, my leg was absolutely killing me. I hadn't fallen, I hadn't done anything, there was no injury, there was no trauma. I didn't know what was going on. I go to work with her, and she's out of pain completely. No pain at all. This went on for about 2 weeks, and the pain became so astronomical, I couldn't even think. It was the most distracting pain. I knew that an X-ray wouldn't show anything because an X-ray only shows acute trauma, and I knew I didn't fall. So, I eventually went to the emergency room because the pain was so bad, and I told them, I said, "I didn't do anything, but this pain is absolutely astounding. I can't take it. Something's wrong. I need a scan of my leg." They got an X-ray, and the X-ray was negative, which I knew it would be because I hadn't had any trauma. But in the meanwhile, my son, who was very concerned about me, went to the emergency room and showed up there. He has my location on my phone. And he came there and he told them that I was saying I didn't need my heart failure medications anymore, that he thought that I was losing touch with reality because of my previous husband passing away, that I was
Mhm.
talking about I was talking to mediums and trying to connect with him. And so the hospital had me mandated to the psychiatric ward. And I was put in there on the Friday before a holiday weekend. It was a year ago, Friday before President's Day, and weekends and holidays don't count. So
Mhm.
those days didn't count. So I ended up in there for 9 days. While I was in there, they were trying. I didn't want to take any medication, and I was telling them everything that was happening. I wasn't holding back. In retrospect, probably wasn't my best idea, but I was just being honest with what I was experiencing. I told them, I said, "If you are concerned about me, I'm not gonna take these heart medicines. I'm not taking them. Keep
Mhm.
monitor me, monitor my blood work, have the cardiologist see me." So the cardiologist saw me, the kidney doctor saw me, the general medicine doctor saw me. My leg was still killing me at this point. They had an internal medicine doctor see me, and I asked him for an MRI of my leg, and he obliged, got the MRI. After I had the MRI, the pain in my leg was completely gone. They come back and they tell me, "We got the result of your MRI, and you have a broken tibia," which is the bone in your shin. And that is the same bone that my patient that I've been caring for, that she had broken. She had it broken right under her knee, and that's where mine was broken. They
Wow.
then made me use a wheelchair because they said that my leg was broken, but I said my leg was hurting before, it wasn't hurting now. Even when I followed up with the orthopedic doctor after I got out of the hospital, he said, "What are we gonna do about this broken leg? How are you getting around?" And I got up and walked, and I said, "I'm fine." He said, how'd that happen? What's going on?" And I said, "I have no idea what's happening with me about anything right now. I don't
Mhm.
understand any." So yeah, after I got out of the hospital, all the downloads had stopped. My granddaughter was born that day that I got out of the hospital, my first granddaughter.
Mhm.
Um, and that began just the year of transformation and just sticking to my journey. I I found metaphysics in that 6-week period. I figured out that that's truly what I believe and what what speaks to my soul.
Let me ask you, a little bit about a reflection on what that was it's an amazing story with all these pieces. And I also lost my husband. I lost him to alcoholism 7 years ago. And it was that trauma and going through all of that. But it is, as you look at your story, there are so many pieces. And so I'm curious about when you looked back, like what was the overwhelming feeling that you had about this transformation you were having?
That this is basically the true takeaway for me is this is all an illusion. This is, I mean, truly the Maya of this being an illusion. We are a projection of our soul. We are here to live and learn lessons. Our reality is shaped by our actions, our deeds, our thoughts. Your thoughts are more powerful than anything. We
Mhm,
truly manifest and create our own reality. I learned so much about creating my reality and creating my space. I created my illness through the trauma in my life, through things I didn't deal with, through things that I allowed to happen or things that I did. I created that illness. Not saying it was my fault, but
mhm,
I called it to me. I called it to me because of the things that I did, because of the thoughts that I had, because of how powerless I thought I was. And
mhm.
here I was never powerless. The power was always in me.
Right. And what is your relationship now like with the divine or with the are you still getting downloads? Are you still hearing from spirit?
No, I actually I don't get downloads anymore. It's kind of like it served its purpose for me to get me back in line. I kind of
Mhm,
feel like my soul was grabbed from the top of my head, pulled out, shook, and I had to take a good look at myself from another perspective and see truly my power. I believe that we're all fractals of the whole. that we are all pieces of God. We are all divine reflections. So my relationship with God is just as significant as my relationship with myself. I am a piece of God, as you are, as we all are. That I look at everybody and everything as divine.
Mhm. So how has your journey been since what have you been doing? How's your journey been going since you left the hospital and your
Oh,
grandchild was
it's so
born?
fun. It's been wonderful. I got my nursing license. I re-upped my nursing license. I had let it lapse because I hadn't worked in 8 years. I did or almost 9 years I didn't work. So I got my nursing license re-upped and I went back to work last April, and I love my job. I love what I do. I've decided to go back to school to be a naturopath because I want to help people who are stuck in that clog of the system of taking 90 pills a day, hoping to get better. When, sometimes medications are very necessary. There are absolutely times they're necessary. But I do believe ultimately you need to fix the things within yourself, fix the energetic reasons, fix the spiritual reasons as to why illness takes hold. So those are the things I want to work on. I have been so since my event, I sense energy in that I get like tactile stimuli that I can almost ask questions to. Um, I
Mhm,
can I can think in my head a question and I can get a response physically. I started mediumship courses and right now, and so I actually have that here in a little bit. And I started mediumship courses, so I'm working on that right now. I plan on going to the Monroe Institute and doing some classes there and learning different things. But this is a long journey. I have a long life ahead of me. I never thought any of this was possible. I was ready to check out. I had my life insurance and I had my plans, and I knew that I wasn't going to be around long. So now I know I'm going to live a very long time. And, you know, I'm just making the
Do
best of
you
it. It's been a very interesting journey.
I'm curious about the relationship that, with the growing up with the evangelical Christianity, and how that, what does that feel like in your life today now that you've kind of had this spiritual awakening? And I guess what I mean is, what is your spiritual life in just a daily practice, and does that have anything to do um, with your life now?
As far as my spirituality, I mostly focus on the fact of being a really good person, trying to be as good and as positive and as uplifting to everyone around me as I can.
Mhm,
Growing up evangelical, so much of it, I can only speak to my experience, but so much of it was about guilt and shame
mhm,
and
mhm,
fear and being damned to the
mhm,
abyss if you fall out of line for arbitrary rules that I've never agreed with. And that's why I
mhm,
never was I never proclaimed to be Christian because of those things. And I love Jesus. I love Jesus's teachings. But
mhm,
I've I take Christianity and all religions as I take the good and I also factor in the the political and the not so good
mhm,
that maybe I don't agree with. To each their own. If someone believes it and they follow it, it makes them feel great, then hey, good. I'm glad you're happy.
mhm,
I'm living my journey. My
mhm,
mom is still an evangelical Christian, and that's great. I love it for her. I love it.
mhm,
Whatever brings her happiness. You know,
mhm,
I explained to my mom, I said, "Hey, mom," I said, when you go to the mall, you turn out of the street and go left. But when I turn out of the mall, I go to the other street and I turn right. We're both going to the mall." Said all roads go back to God,
yeah,
all of
yeah,
them. No matter
yeah,
which road you take. Like if you take the route of Christianity or a Muslim or a Buddhist or atheist, all
mhm,
roads are going back to the same. Because at the end of the day, we're all pieces of the whole.
mhm, yeah,
I just try to have respect for everybody at this point. I used to be extremely cynical, very jaded, very, very jaded, and that's completely gone for me. That's just not who I am
Yeah.
anymore.
If there was one part of your journey that you felt was the turning point, the real turning point, is there, what would it be? Would you say it was, that in the car when that happened? Or is it, where was it that your mind went, oh my goodness, this really is, I am connected, and this is this is a spiritual
I
journey
think
that
I think the broken leg really, because that's something that I couldn't, as a science-based person, I couldn't explain away. There was no reason. The
Mhm,
broken leg was probably the first piece of, like, evidence. The also getting these downloads telling me things of things that I didn't ways I didn't think, things I didn't know. Between those
mhm,
2 things, that's definitely the turning point. Because had the car thing only happened and nothing else, I would have scratched my head about it, but I don't
mhm,
think I'd have lost a lot of sleep. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that was just the impetus to looking further.
mhm. Well, and I ask that because I think what happens for a lot of us and a lot of our listeners is that we do have some experiences, but that they're easy to kind of uh, think, okay, this didn't really happen, or it happened, but there was something else that caused it, and I just don't realize it. And so I was just curious that how, where that turning point often happens. And
I've learned all
you mentioned the trauma
Good
that you
point.
grew up with. And I also know that trauma can often bring on spiritual experiences, and that is something that also can happen.
I mean, ultimately, there's no coincidences in anything. Even if you can rationalize it away and find a reason, there's no coincidences ever. None of it,
Mhm,
because I truly believe this is all a projection. We are experiencing this as a way to learn and grow. If you want to explain away every little thing that happens in your life, you can. But if you look a little deeper, I promise you, you'll find a connection. You will. It's there. It's there. Your
mhm,
team is talking to you. God is talking to you. Your loved ones, your guides, whoever you believe in, they're communicating with you. Your body is your antenna. When you're feeling anxiety, it's because your soul has no other way to communicate with you. Your soul
mhm,
is or your body is your vehicle. So when you're feeling angst, you need to fix something in your life. There's something you need to fix. There's something you need to change. So long I took a pill or drank or just, immersed myself in something else to not deal with the things I needed to deal with. But I got myself a really good therapist when I got out of the hospital. That was the first thing I did. And I went and found her and I was just hysterical. And I said, my family thinks I'd lost it. I was explaining to her everything. I said, I don't know what's going on with me. And she said, you are okay. You are
mhm,
fine. You are going through a spiritual awakening. We will get you through this. And I
mhm.
see her every week and I talk about all my stuff and I get through all of my muck because never again will I store that in my body. Your body does keep a score. It's your
Mhm.
antenna.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there often is, it's very true that our bodies, um, you I recently was with somebody who was explaining and talking about, she's a medical intuitive, and she was talking about how our whole body is really part of the divine. When our souls are in this body, that, all of us, and so our bodies give us so much information. And just what, there is a book that the body keeps the score. And there's so much information that we can learn. And one of the things that I'm feeling from you is this deep centering, kind of heart centering, that when you are in um, like it's your divine center, that's where you speak from when you are. Would you? How does that feel? What is?
Oh, no, I agree completely. I mean, I know that I have a purpose. That's why I'm sharing my story. It's because it's not about me. This isn't about Olivia and, something spectacular that happened to me. Not one bit, because any of us are capable of this. I
Mhm.
truly do care. I truly do want others to hear my story and know how bleak it was for me. That's why I'm telling people, because I know what it feels like to be bleak. I know what it feels like to be told you're not going to live and that this is your forever.
Yeah.
And I just I if I can tell one person that, it can get better and you truly can control it, you truly can change your perspective. Even if, that is an illness that you're gonna have, simply changing your perspective, you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer with things. Suffering's a choice. Pain's a requirement, but suffering is always optional.
Yeah. So if there were that was beautiful, like a beautiful summing up. Is there anything else that you would any advice that you would give to someone who um, is maybe isn't on a spiritual journey yet, but is drawn to learning more, or just any advice that you would give to someone who maybe was in your position um, before you
Well,
started?
um, so my for my kids, they are not on a spiritual path at all. Neither of them. But they've seen how my life has changed in the last year. And so what I tell them is that ultimately we're energetic beings. Our body, our heart, our brain are all conducted through electricity. When you think negative, when you do negative, when you absorb negative, you attract that to you. We are energetic beings. Whatever you put out into the world will come back. So they actually have started employing that in their lives. When they do the things, when they think the things that are more positive, when they do the things that are more positive, positive comes back to them, and they've seen it in their own lives. So anybody, I tell them it's completely free to change how you're thinking about things. When someone cuts you off, instead of getting angry, think, gosh, I really wonder what's going on with their life today that they had to do that. When someone snaps at you, have mercy for them, because you don't know what they're going through. Just by making those simple changes, you'll be truly surprised how much you change in your own life, what you attract back to you.
Mhm. That was beautiful. If people want to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
My email is Livy Star, LIVISTARR at gmail.com. That's probably the best way.
That's the best way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, wait, there should be one more I, LIVISTARR.
Okay, we'll make sure that that's good for the after. Well, Olivia, it's a beautiful story. It's an amazing story, and it has so many pieces to it that I feel that people will connect to. So so grateful that you came and shared it with us, and
Thanks, Bernadette.
that you know keep us posted.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.